The Ukrainian Air Force says they have struck and destroyed another bridge in Russia's Kursk region as they seek to disrupt Moscow's combat operations and supply routes. The battlefield situation in Ukraine remains dire as Russian forces march steadily forward. But after defending home soil for 2.5 years, Ukraine's forces are now on the front foot inside Russian territory.
Ukraine's first counter-offensive on Russian soil is taking aim at critical infrastructure in the Kursk region. 2 key bridges over the Sime River were destroyed by Ukrainian forces over the weekend, frustrating Russia's ability to resupply troops trying to fend off Ukraine's incursion. More than 11 days into the assault, Ukraine is digging in. Kyiv wants to shift the dynamics of the 2.5-year war in its favour after Moscow's 2022 invasion. For Ukraine's troops, the unprecedented ground assault marks a new stage in the conflict, taking the war to the invaders' home turf.
Of course it's preferable to fight on their territory. It would be best if they weren't on our territory at all, and that's what I'd call victory.
Russia claims that US-supplied HIMARS missiles are being used in the attack. Ukraine has not commented on this, although the US and its NATO allies have authorized Kyiv to use their weapons to attack targets inside Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky has renewed his call for the West to supply longer-range weapons as it tries to take out critical infrastructure. Kyiv claims to have seized over 1,000 square kilometers in Kursk, including Sudzha.
The city is still being cleared. Sudzha is already fully under control, but there are different zones, different basements. We're finding Russians and catching them. Otherwise, the situation remains tense. The troops continue to advance. The enemy tries to enter with small sabotage groups. They fail, and we destroy them.
Sudzha is the last major transit point for Russian pipeline gas still heading for Europe via Ukraine. Just under half of Russia's gas exports to Europe come through here. There are questions about whether Gazprom could use the fighting as an excuse to halt gas exports via Sudzha prematurely. The security of energy infrastructure is a key factor in the conflict. Moscow's atomic agency Rosatom has warned of a growing crisis at nuclear power plants in Kursk and in Russian-occupied Zaporizhia in Ukraine. Ukraine's targeting of Russia's infrastructure is widening. Ukrainian drones also attacked an oil storage facilities in Russia's southern Rostov region early Sunday morning, sparking a large fire.
Let's bring in Elena Sokova, Executive Director of the Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation. Hello, Elena. We are at a point in a war where there are fears that nuclear plants could be hit. How worried are you?
Generally, any military activities or attacks near or at the facilities are worrisome, because they could potentially lead to radiation release. And in the last week alone, we saw several attacks near Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine that has been occupied by Russia since the beginning of the war. First, there was a fire last weekend near the cooling tower. Then there was an attack on the energy transmission system in the middle of the week. And a day ago, there was an attack with a drone explosives on the road it's outside of the territory of the plant, but on the road leading to the plant. So any military activities around nuclear power plants or active nuclear facilities are providing some risk, creating some risks to potential release of radiation.
Right.
However, if we talk about Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, the plant itself and its reactors have been shut down. So we are not talking about a potential big release of radiation. However, we do need to have water and electricity to cool the reactors and the fuel from them to avoid meltdown.
Right. Meanwhile, there's the blame game going on. Russia accuses Ukraine of plotting to attack willingly the Kursk power plant. Ukraine has called the Russian claims insane propaganda. What do you think?
Well, first of all, the Russian claims provided no evidence of any attacks planned by Ukraine on the Russian nuclear power plant in Kursk, near Kursk. But I'm also worried that these claims are not new. If you go back to the beginning of the war in 2022, in February, Russia have been claiming since that time that Ukraine have been developing dirty bomb and even a nuclear bomb, and they plan to stage that attack. That was one of the pretexts that Russia used in attacking Ukraine. So we don't have evidence, and we shouldn't be speculating about whether there is a plan or not. Ukraine bluntly denies it, and at this point we can speculate as much as we can, but without any evidence.
Right.
There is no reason to believe these claims by Moscow.
Right. We'll have to keep tabs on that. Elena Sokova, thank you.
My pleasure.
Let's bring in DW correspondent Sonia Phalnikar in Kyiv. What's the latest you've been hearing about these power plants, first of all?
Well, as you said there, Russia has warned of what it says is a worsening situation at the Kursk nuclear power plant. This is located about 80 kilometers from the town of Suja, which Ukrainian forces captured earlier this week in their kind of ongoing incursion into that region. Now, we've seen a lot of claims and counterclaims around this. Russia's defense ministry yesterday said Ukraine was planning an attack on this nuclear power plant. The Russian media have been saying some missile parts have been found near it. Ukraine has denied all these claims. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has called it a surge of what he says is insane propaganda. And Ukraine, is suggesting that this is an attempt by Russia of a nuclear false flag operation, if you like, to kind of distract from its failures to repel the Ukrainian offensive in the Kursk region so far.
And with Ukraine still holding territories in Russia, has Zelensky outlined Ukraine's overall goals there?
Well, we don't know as yet how long Ukraine plans to hold on to these territories that it seized in the Kursk region in its ongoing ground offensive there. But we have certainly heard from several Ukrainian officials, including President Zelensky, about some of the kind of thinking that went into this incursion and some of the goals for this operation. For one, they say that these territories that they've seized could serve as a bargaining chip, could put Ukraine in a stronger position when it comes to kind of any future peace negotiations. Secondly, they say this is also aimed at trying to stop Russia from using that Kursk region as a kind of launch pad for devastating cross-border aerial attacks, which have been targeting, in particular, the neighboring Ukrainian region of Sumy. And lastly, they're hoping, at least, that this incursion will kind of force Russia to redeploy some of its troops from frontline positions in Ukraine. Now, we heard from some U.S. officials yesterday who say that is beginning to happen, that Russia is reportedly, redirecting thousands of its troops, some of its brigades away from the front lines. But we don't know where exactly that is happening. We heard from one Ukrainian military official this week who said they are moving troops mainly from the southern front line in Kherson and Zaporizhia. But there is little evidence yet that this is really easing any of the pressure on the eastern front, especially in the Donetsk region, where Ukrainian defenses are really overstretched and trying to repel intensifying Russian attacks. We're hearing that Russian troops there are now closing in on the strategic town of Pokrovsk.
The latest there from DW correspondent Sonia Phalnikar in Kyiv.